Hello, hello, hello. I am back. Happy New Year. I hope everyone had an amazing holiday. Let me double check my sound real quick before I get too far along in my conversation. All right. So, hello, hello, hello. Let's get started. I don't like to belabor. We're going to talk about some basics in finance. We're going to talk about so much this year that we're going to get really into the nitty gritty about a few things. Hold on one. We are going to get right into it. We have an amazing lineup for this year. Hopefully, if you're watching live, maybe you received my email to invite you. We're going to go really, really into a lot of financial topics this year. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. Before we get started and I talk about the big rule we all need to know, which is the rule of 72, I'm going to give you your weekly money affirmation. And it is, I am always doubling my wealth. Happy New Year, Sherelle. This week's manifestation is, I am always doubling my wealth. I think I'm going to say that for the rest of the year because I think I want to double mine all the time. So I'm going to take you through a really quick formula. So grab a pen and paper. And it's so simple, yet many people don't know it and don't use it to their advantage. Many of us, it's affecting us negatively. So here's how it works. The rule of 72. You take the number 72 and you divide it by the interest rate you are receiving or you're paying. Now, think about that. A lot of times we get into debt because of our interest rates, right? Just think about some of your credit cards and things like that. What are the interest rates? You can tell me in the chat. What are the interest rates on some of your credit cards? Or what are the interest rates on some you've heard? I mean, maybe you don't want to, dime yourself out, right? But what are the interest rates? If the interest rate is 15% and you divide that by 72, that's how long it's going to take that debt to double. Now, I have a fancy old school calculator. So 72 divided by 15, it's going to take 4.5 years for your debt to double. Now, if that was an investment or a strategic savings account, that 15%, that would be how long it took your money to double for it to grow. Now, the catch is when we start talking about interest rates and the rule of 72 is to remember it works both ways. It works in your favor and it works against you. And many of us have it working against us because we have credit card debt, we have car loan debt, we have mortgages, we have student loans, we have personal loans, and some people have payday loans. All these things work against us because the higher the interest rate, the faster it takes that number to double. And it doesn't matter if you're earning it or paying it. And I think that's the misnomer that we always miss. And I know I see a lot of people talk about the rule of 72, but I don't hear people telling you that, you know what, your debt's doubling too. And so that's why it's so important to really take a look at both sides. And here's a layer, something else on top of it. If you add in inflation, you have a different challenge. As of November-ish 2022, inflation rate went down to about 7.1 because it was way, way up, but it's creeping down. But if you have money saved somewhere that's earning less than the inflation rate, you're technically still losing money to an extent. It's better to have it somewhere than nowhere, but you're technically losing money if you're not at least at the rate of inflation, which is around 7%, 7.1%. And so when you think about the rule of 72, take whatever it is. If you got a savings account that's now, I noticed the savings accounts have bumped up their rates and it's now 3%. 3% was still half of the inflation rate, but now it's going to take your money a little bit less time to double. And case in point, think about all the rich families that you know. Well, you may not know them personally, but you know of, right? The Rockefellers, the the Trumps. I mean, you can just keep naming them, all the big companies that have their money invested. The reason their money continues to grow is because they started it 100, 200, 300 years ago and creating that generational wealth. So their money continues to double no matter how much money they spend. Now, many of us are in the beginning stages of trying to figure that out for our families, but you have to start somewhere. And that's why the little details matter. The small dollar amounts matter, because the more money you're able to put into a savings or investment strategy or something strategic that's going to grow, it matters, because based on your interest rate, that's the amount of money that's going to double. So if you only have $1,000 invested at 3%, which isn't a lot of money, you take 72, you divide it by 3, and that's just the savings. It'll take 24 years to double. If that $1,000 was $100,000, same amount of time, but it's still the amount that's going to double. And that's why the small, consistent things that we do towards growing our money helps us in the long run with things like the rule of 72. So keep that in mind when you're doing little things and moving forward. And again, I'm not one of those people that's going to tell you don't spend money on anything. What I'm going to tell you is spend your money smarter, the way you really want to spend it, and not the way you kind of end up spending it without a plan or without direction or without some idea of how to get things done. So that's your rule of 72 in less than 5 minutes. And I will be back again next week, same bad time, same bad channel, to talk about the next set of financial tools. Now, if you need help, it's the beginning of the year. Many of us want help getting started. You want to put together a spending plan, which is different than a budget. Reach out to me, saran10k.com, and you can book an appointment, and we will work on putting together a spending plan for you for the year. And what that means is you're intentionally saying, this is how I want to spend my money for this year, versus planning it out every 2 weeks or every week or every month when you get paid. You're saying in January, if I make $100,000, I want this amount of money to do this. I want this amount of money to do that. And then you back it into your bi-weekly, weekly, monthly budget. And so it's so important to have that type of plan. But go ahead and get on my calendar, and we can set that up for you. But again, remember, this week's money manifestation is I am always doubling my wealth. I'll see you soon.